I've touched on this movie in the past, so I'll keep this one, I guess, on the briefer side. But my masterpiece of his is Arrival from 2016, starring Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, Forrest Whitaker. Quick logline: a linguist works with the military to communicate with alien life forms after 12 mysterious spacecrafts appear around the world. And I think, to me, this movie is definitely an up-leveling for him, especially in terms of, scale and scope of storytelling, but also what you touched on, that his movies prior to this were definitely way darker. And this is actually a very hopeful movie in the sense where this like catastrophic thing is happening, and the point of view of the movie is of that of kindness and listening to each other and communicating with each other, whoever that might be, alien beings or
Hmm.
people here on Earth, and trying to solve our differences and come together for the greater good. It's also a mother-daughter story, which lends like a totally different angle to it. And yet it is mysterious. Like you don't fully grab everything. There's sort of, flash forward, flashback things happening in the movie.
Hmm.
And then I can't sort of walk away by not mentioning Amy Adams's performance, which I think totally grounds the movie, because so much of this movie is just in her eyes and just kind of in her breath, because not much is said of what's going on. And that's true to the character, like how she works, but also the story that's happening around her. And then I've never seen kind of alien interaction and those the scriptures that we see between these aliens and how they communicate ever done that way. Like it's just such a masterwork of just depicting that, I think, and not doing it just for like, oh, how cool is it, but it's very much part of the story. It's
Hmm.
emotional, actually. There's it sort of landed on me in a very emotional way, and at the same time being really, really cool, which is again hard to pull off. So yeah, to me, like this feels like his masterpiece so far, where
Hmm.
the technicality, the emotional storytelling, the realism of it, yet the science fiction of it all, it kind of comes together. That's my favorite of his and a masterpiece in my mind.
Yeah, yeah. And for listeners, if you want to hear more thoughts as we talk through Arrival, we did it in a previous episode, cover it. I think it was our episode on meaning of life, I believe. I had seen this movie in theaters actually, because even though I was not a Denny fan, this got so much acclaim, and I like, hard science fiction like this. I did went to see it, and it was okay upon first watch. And now that I've watched it, again for the podcast, it's sort of grown on me a little bit, especially our discussion around the themes of this movie being about communication, which I do think is an optimistic view of people just need to talk to each other. And I think that is the message of this movie. And yes, it unlocks this power of then you can see into the future with the alien language if you understand it, but the aliens are forcing humans to talk to one another. And despite our differences, which I do think is a very positive message and something that any situation, if you have a disagreement or there's a misalignment, the first step is you just got to talk. Because if you're not going to talk, you're never going to sort it out. It's always going to lead to disaster. And I think communication is one of our biggest gifts as just a species, too. Like we can communicate on levels that other animals, at least at this point on Earth, can't. Not that they can't communicate with each other, but we can do it at an even higher level and communicate other things. So I do think that that is very an important message, and I liked that the movie was talking about that. And I think you're totally right in terms of up leveling his career. This one definitely did. I think that the piece that maybe this will take me even more times to kind of grok this a little bit, but there is sort of this other message of the film because of Amy Adams' character as she's learning this language, and that the secret of the alien language is you can then essentially see into the future or experience
Yeah.
time non-linearly, and that she realizes in the future she's gonna have a child and the child's going to die, and then it's going to ruin her marriage. And she decides then to, have the child anyway, which I think is a cool message of like, yes, there's ups and downs in life, but it's about, the highs sometimes come lows, but you don't want to erase the highs just because you don't want to deal with the lows. But then there is this sort of issue about, or not, it's a statement potentially on like predestination. Like she was only seeing one vision of her future. Does that mean she didn't have the power to change it at all? And this just was going to happen and she just had to go into it anyway? Or did she have agency in her life? And I think that was an interesting point the movie was raising, and maybe saying you don't have agency, I guess, because she had no choice, I think, but to experience this. Which I do feel that you have certain things. You're in a box. Like society puts you in a box. If you don't have an infinite number of choices, in life because of the structures that we're under. But you do have some agency in it, and I thought that was a little bit sad, I guess. And I felt like, what, does she have no choice here? Or I don't know if you read into that the same thing I did of like, this is the thing that's going to happen, and it's how she deals with it, or if she had an agency in changing it. Did you get that sense from that?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it sort of feels like you have agency in terms of the choices you make, but not the outcomes they have.
I see.
You know,
Which is
so the
true.
choice,
Yeah.
yeah, the choice she made was that, yeah, I want to go with this, but I can't really control what ends up happening eventually. And that's
Mhm.
sort of that.
Yeah, which is life.
Yeah,
I
which
think
is
that's
life.
why it fits so well in our meaning of life episode, or
Yeah.
that yeah, you can't control those. You can't control the outcomes. You can control the choices.
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool. But I think yeah, this movie definitely is worth seeing if folks haven't seen it, or even if you were like me and have an aversion to Denny for any particular reason. This is a movie that is still worth checking out. Like I said, the more times I see it, the more I understand how special a movie it is. Even if I wasn't completely blown away by it even now, as much as I think you are to call it like his masterpiece, but it's a movie that I think will stand the test of time for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
I think so too. And, we've seen so many science fiction movies just in that, like how it's constructed. Like,
Hmm.
it's so hard to shock us, jaded audiences of, what alien forms might look like or what
Right.
spaceships might look like and how will they show up and what have you. And I think this movie surprises, and that's the big part of it, right? Like otherwise, how will you tune in,
Right.
And so I think the movie pulls that up, but then I think delivers more so on the emotionality and the depth of it. It's a very quiet movie for the subject matter. Like a movie like this, I mean, it's Independence Day, right? Like done in a
Right.
totally different way. Like, can you imagine these two movies side by side? Like, it's nuts, right?
Yeah, welcome
That's
to
how we would,
Earth. You just
yeah,
punch the cephalopod or whatever. That's what Will Smith
basically.
would do. Ooh, actually, that sounds really bad too. Speaking of Will Smith,
I
he
know.
probably would slap it instead of punch it now. But sorry, yeah, sorry, Will Smith.
So it's amazing that a movie like this exists, which can be quieter and have all this breadth to it and makes you think and feel pretty amazing.
Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.